Good girl. Hey guys, welcome to Jared's Junk Drawer. I'm JR, this is Boots, and over here is Dukina. Hopefully we don't have any accidents like we did last week.
Oh, she's pooping. At least you waited till you were off my head.
Today we're getting back to painting some Genshin Impact. It has been a while, but I am looking forward to this. The character suggested for this episode, Lisa. Awesome idea from the comments section. Lisa is a great choice. This is going to be a lot of fun. If any of you have an idea for any future characters, it doesn't have to be Genshin Impact. Any idea is welcome. Post it down below in the comments, and it might be featured in a future painting. For now, I've got some ideas rolling around in my head on today's painting, so let's go ahead and get started. Where are you going, girl? The first few sketches I tried out were nowhere near capturing Lisa's personality. I know from my time playing Genshin Impact that Lisa is a strong, dominant character with a seductive way of emoting almost everything she says. So we need to work to embody that in today's painting, exaggerating aspects of her personality to the forefront of the image. We did this notably last time with Ningguang, a character who brings to mind royalty and superiority, hence the upwards camera angle that was featured in that piece. But every painting needs to start somewhere, and even though we're just getting started, the scene we're designing is already beginning to take shape. Her pinky pulling on her lip and her glance cutting over her shoulder. Both are already showing openly seductive body language. Honestly, the overall pose is not dissimilar from what we did with Ningguang, but it's those key differences that we'll focus on today to distinguish the two paintings. We only need to refine this painting past the ugly phase it's currently in. Paintings oftentimes go through ugly stages, and it's important to remember that that's okay. Things don't have to look perfect from the start. When a painting looks subjectively bad, like this one does right now, it helps to not be overwhelmed by all the issues at once. So target them one at a time. Now that does not mean to tunnel vision one area of the painting to the point of perfection. I only mean handle each problem a little at a time. Lisa's hat is a little too high up, so we drop it down. The flat colors aren't showing the full range that will be present in the final character. So we start the earliest stages of laying out the details, prominently featuring the gold trim around the design. Everyone seems to enjoy how I handle metal, so I'll definitely lean into that and increase the amount of gold and metal present in Lisa's clothing. The point is, by refining each of these issues a little at a time, it makes the process less overwhelming and easier to handle. And soon enough, you'll find a painting begin to incrementally improve. Now you should learn from my mistakes too. I might not have needed this many proportion adjustments in the painting had I done a refinement sketch earlier. But what can you do? This time I went straight from the rough sketch to flat colors without taking the time to refine the drawing. And this is the result. I still ended up needing to make all the same fixes that I could have handled with an extra sketch. They just become a little more spread out throughout the painting and a bit more complicated to fix. Oh well, I'll still keep pushing on this painting until it's done. It's nothing our Liquify and Transform tools can't solve with a bit of persistence. We're going to get started repainting Lisa's clothing, adding details and more clearly defining each of the materials involved. Throughout Lisa's original design, floral patterns are abundant. And if we're creative about the placement, we can expand on that design feature. I'll start this with her short sleeves, where there's a nice purple swath of color to sink a pattern into. This is where I'll start making noticeable deviations from the original design, one of which is to emboss it on the surface of another material. This effect does not need to be overly visible. Better to leave it as a downplayed detail that people can notice when they take a closer look at the finished painting. Before we move on from the clothing, I want to at least briefly cover the color scheme: purple, white, gold, and black. These are the 4 colors you see in Lisa's outfit. A character's color scheme is often one of the most recognizable traits of their appearance. Even if I were to overhaul the clothing choice, I would likely still preserve the same colors so that the character could remain recognizable at a glance. The purple and white are her primary and secondary colors, respectively, and they provide the majority of the contrast throughout her outfit. While the gold and black function more as accent and relief colors for her design, they complement and add separation to the other colors. I need to understand this so that as I make alterations, I can maintain continuity with the original design. For example, even though I'm increasing the amount of gold around the outfit, I never deviate it from its original role as trim. This is a good opportunity to talk about her neck accessory, her vision, the purple crystal on her necklace. Although it's not really a necklace as much as it's a connective chain between her 2 shoulder plates. The point is, this accessory is a crucial asset to her design, so I want to make sure to give it some extra love. I want the gold and crystal to really feel like they're intended materials. From the way the gold reflects her skin color, both in shadow and light, to the sharp highlights that brilliantly glow and glisten, more than they technically should while being in the shadows, but that's because I want them to be eye-grabbing. While the crystal, on the other hand, has a balance of contrast between sheen on the surfaces facing the light source and the color almost glowing from within, caused by refraction. Of course, there's the fact that it's a magical fantasy crystal. I think it should kind of feel like it's glowing. I'm making an alteration to Lisa's hat. I'm taking what is normally a black trim pattern and swapping it out for gold instead. There's no significant reason for this change. It's rather arbitrary because I felt like it. From the beginning, you might have noticed that my goal has not been to replicate the original one for one, but instead to reinterpret the design into my art style. This includes reworking the details, if only to have a little fun with the painting process. I similarly made changes to the gloves Lisa wears, which are usually black. I chose to make them purple, because reasons. There's no deeper thought in this design. I went with purple because I wanted to see if purple would look good, which I think it turned out pretty good. Although it is overwhelmingly purple at the moment, which is why I'm giving the ends of the glove a black lining as an accent color. Along the way, I also paid close attention to the lighting level so that the two materials blended well with one another. Admittedly, that's a minor detail, but material blending in this form is not something I get a lot of practice with. So I was relatively happy with how it turned out. I think it's about time we get to work with Lisa's hair. Right now, it's a bit blobbish, if that's a word. It needs a lot more shine and strandy detail. This involves a lot of painting back and forth to build up texture. But I'm also paying attention to where the shadows from the hat are casting. I obviously wouldn't want the hair under the hat to look like it's being bathed in full sunlight. I also want to block in the placement of her hair accessory, at least roughly. The ribbon was my idea, but the fancy part of the clip will eventually be a flower. A little bit hard to tell that right now with what I painted, but trust me, it will eventually be a flower, which is present in her original design. The hair is starting to build up some nice detail, but we can make it look even better. I'm going to add some extra punch with a color dodge layer. I've clipping masked the new layer to the hair's core layer, and now I'm going to scatter soft highlights around. After, we'll cut back in with an eraser to bring back some of the shadows. Wow, the hair is starting to look really awesome now. And at this point, most people might think that the hair seems finished. But I can't help myself. I'm going back in for another pass adding details. It needs a little more shine here and a little more shadows there. And now the hair is done, at least for now. Backing away from the image, the background is still very lifeless. So I asked myself, what other aspects of Lisa's personality do I have to draw on? Well, she's a mage, so there's always the option of swirling magic. But I think it'd be better to lean on the fact that she's sort of Mondstadt's resident librarian. Some floating books and papers would be perfect for the background. And as long as I keep them somewhat small and subdued, Lisa herself should still feel like our primary focal point. Okay, I've been procrastinating painting the flowers, I'll admit it, but it is getting a little absurd. I mean, we're like 2/3 done with this painting, and this is what the flowers still look like. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea how to paint flowers, but I'm going to learn.
Thousands of tears later.
Okay, I think I've got a rough idea of how to paint flowers now. I looked up some examples and did my best to replicate the structure when I painted my own. Now I only need to apply what I've learned a couple of times and then we can move on to the next step. I'm going to gloss over the specifics of how to paint flowers because that's really its own tutorial and I just kind of learned how to paint them myself today. But if you are all still interested in the specifics, let me know down in the comments, and if enough of you feel like I should have covered the topic in more detail, I'll put together a step-by-step and post it to social media. I'm really impressed with how this painting is coming along. I think it's time I repaint the face. It still needs a little more work. I'll start with the eyes, as they're what needs the most work, I'd say. I always keep the eyes on a separate layer from the rest of the face to make any adjustments a lot easier. From changing their position and spacing to making the eyelashes more detailed. Every edit to the eyes is made more accessible by keeping them on a separate layer. And of course, can't forget those highlights. Oh, wow, they're just, it just brings the whole painting to a whole other level. Anyways, it's time we get started on final lighting. One of my favorite aspects of any painting. I start by paint bucketing a shadow color across the whole painting on a multiply layer. And once I have a nice even coat, I focus on defining my lighting by removing the shadows with an eraser. It's a very effective technique that I have used on almost all my paintings. It not only helps with darkening shadows that might need some extra contrast, but can also help to add some uniformity to the color scheme across an entire painting. Because all the shadows will start to take on a similar hue once you take this step. After I'm satisfied with the shadows, I come back in with lighting layers. Today I used a combination of color dodge and screen to go around the painting and brighten things up. I have one last addition I want to try out. Right now, the background just kind of ends with the edge of the circle. So with the gold trim present in Lisa's design, what about giving the circle itself a gold edge to match? Maybe with some fantasy-styled inscription. I've always enjoyed finding a way to work that into a painting. Oops, one last detail. I meant to do this earlier, but I forgot. All of her papers are still blank. Let's fix that with some abstract text and pictures, and maybe a diagram or two. Ooh, actually, what about a map? Let's, I'm aiming for this to look like the area of the map between Liyue and Mondstadt. Let me know down in the comments if I did a fair job at replicating it from memory, or if I botched it up and just completely trashed the design. I genuinely don't know. I still have not looked it up myself. And finally, all done. Wow. I'm thrilled with how this painting has turned out. Lisa might not be one of my mains, but she's a fun character, and I'm really glad that I got a chance to paint her. I particularly like how the books turned out, and it was fun to get a chance to use drop shadows again. But if I had to choose what I think turned out the best, I would have to say her sleeve. It's an oddball choice for sure, but I really think it turned out great, and all the details just came together perfectly for it, especially the way the light catches on the gold trim. When you look closely at the design, you might realize that the shine is only made up of small, random scribble lines with a light pen, and not much more. But sometimes for a painting, that's all you need, and I think it turned out perfect. Again, thank you to everyone who made a suggestion for today's episode. If any of you have a suggestion or follow-up question about the episode of your own, let me know in the comments below, and I'll do my best to provide some answers. While you're down there, if you're one of my viewers who has played Genshin Impact, let me know by commenting, let's see, what can we say? How about Tone Deaf Bard? But that is going to be all for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as it lets me know that you enjoyed today's episode and like to see more content like this. In the meantime, here is a playlist of all the other times on the channel we have painted Genshin Impact fan art. And over here is a video YouTube thinks you might like. Anyways, thank you all for joining us, and hope to see you next time.